orally transmitted teachings Owarongi Kuden on Buddhism Lesson 9, The Three Treasures of Buddhism, the Treasure of Buddhist Law, the Treasure of Buddhism, the Treasure of the Soka Gakkai instead of the monk's treasure are constitutive of the three treasures of Buddhism, or the jewels of Buddhism. The Treasure of Buddhist Law, the Buddhist Law, the master of all the Buddhas, must be propagated at the risk of our lives. Buddhist Law, master of all Buddhas, Nam-Myôhô-Renge-kyo is the most important component of the three treasures. The law, Nam-Myôhô-Renge-kyo, is the master of all the Buddhas. It is the law that makes the Buddhas worthy of respect, says Daishonin in the Four Debts of Gratitude, Gosho 6. Long before him, the great master Tnta magnified the treasure of the law. The law is the master of the wise. Nothing is more important than the law that gives birth, that elevates, develops and brings prosperity. This is why the human being is less important than the law, which is fundamental. Buddhist law, a law that must be propagated, even at the risk of one's life. Buddhist law, the most important treasure of the three treasures, must be propagated in season and out of season. In time, when everything is going well. At the wrong time, when everything is not going well, in difficulties or even at the risk of one's life. As long as Kosen Rufu is not realized, propagate the wonderful law to the best of your ability, even at the risk of your life. This warning is taken from the 26 Articles of Prevention by Nikko Shonin, the direct successor of Nichiren Daishonin. This need to propagate Buddhist law even at the risk of one's life is illustrated by the story of the king's emissary who must faithfully report the words of his sovereign, and not change anything even in the peril of his life. This story is recorded in the Nirvana Sutra. The Buddha's treasure. The Buddha's treasure refers to the Buddha Shakyamuni and by extension to all the time Buddhas of the universe. The Buddha Shakyamuni and the Gosho, the Four Debts of Gratitude. The Daishonin tells us why the Buddha Shakyamuni is, par excellence, the Buddha's treasure. For Nichiren Daishonin, we should be grateful to Shakyamuni Buddha for the fact that he has given us, and we continue to enjoy, his merits and good fortune on the one hand, and the benefits of his practice on the other. The Buddhas of all times. The reasons for our debt of gratitude to the Buddhas of all times to the extent that the Buddhas of all times, at the same time as they protect us and teach ordinary men and women to free themselves from the sufferings of birth and death, we owe them a debt of gratitude. Examples of some Buddhas worthy of recognition during Shohoira Nagarjuna, the second Buddha, the precursor of the provisional Mahayana and master of universal emptiness, is worthy of recognition. During Soho in China, Grand Master Tiante, master of the principle of Ichinen Sansen and reformer of the provisional Mahayana, is worthy of recognition. Also worthy of recognition are the great masters Miao, Zhanggen, Nanyu, great craftsmen of the establishment of Buddhism in China. In Japan, Deng Yoshiz, the great master of the propagation of Buddhism in Japan and the great craftsman of the veneration of the Lotus Sutra in Japan, is worthy of respect. Under Mappo Nichiren Daishonin, the father of the three great esoteric laws and the great reformer of Buddhism, is worthy of recognition. Also worthy of recognition, in the furrows traced by the Daishonin, are Nikko Shonin, the universal legatee of the Daishonin, Nikkei Shonin, the 26th administrator and great reformer of the Nichiren Shoshu, the most erudite by the way, the three great masters, Meikaguchi, Toda, Ikeda, the great realizers of the great shrine of the definitive teaching. The treasure of Buddhism to the extent that the Soka Gakkai has become the great sanctuary of definitive teaching, the third component of the three great esoterics. As far as the three treasures of Buddhism are concerned, a new paradigmatic normality will take hold. The establishment of a paradigmatic new normalcy to this day, the three treasures of Buddhism are made up of treasure of the law, treasure of the Buddha, treasure of the monk. From now on, we will have to say, treasure of the law, treasure of the Buddha, treasure of the Soka Gakkai. The rationale for the new paradigmatic normalcy. The lessons learned from Gosho, the Four Debts of Gratitude or Letter to Kudo Yoshitaka or Izu Gosho. In this Gosho, the Daishonin teaches us that it is the monk who perpetuates the treasure of Buddhism. In other words, it is the monk who propagates Buddhism. Hiskambarto firewood, without which there can be no fires. That is to say, the existence coupled with the perpetuation of Buddhism through time is the monk's doing. From now on, let's take the Daishonin at his word now. Who perpetuates the treasure of the Buddha and the treasure of the law? This is the Soka Gakkai. Under these conditions, the Soka Gakkai must be compared to firewood, the lack of which deprives us of fires. So of life. As we know, at that time the wood fire was used for cooking, heating and lighting. In view of all the above, the monk is no longer the third treasure of Buddhism. From then on, he gave way to the Soka Gakkai. Recourse to the Aristotelian syllogism to close and strengthen this new paradigmatic normalcy who perpetuates the Buddha's treasure and the law's treasure is the monk. Now the Soka Gakkai perpetuates the Buddha's treasure and the treasure of the law. So the Soka Gakkai is the monk. You will be able to deepen this theme further through my sutras or writings of a Buddha available on Amazon. FR for the original version and Amazon.com for the American English version, in paperback and Kindle book editions, as well as on other Amazon sales sites.